convening this live Community and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny Board, which is taking place in line with revised regulations. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded. I'm Vicky Castry, Scrutiny Coordinator. Present at the meeting are the following members: Councillor Naeem Akhtar, Chair, Councillor Faye Abbott, Councillor Roger Bailey, Councillor Matty Heaven and Councillor Robert Thay. Supporting this meeting is Jenny Holmes, Scrutiny Coordinator. Officers will introduce themselves before they speak. May I remind everyone to keep their microphones on mute and their cameras turned off unless you have been invited to speak by the Chair. If members of the committee or officers wish to speak, please do so by using the raise hands function. I will now hand you over to the Chair of the meeting, Councillor Naeem Akhtar.
Thank you, Vicky. Good morning and welcome to the Communities and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny Board. The first item is apologies and substitutions.
We haven't had any apologies, Chair.
Move on to declaration of interest. Is there any interest to declare? I take it as a no. The next item is minutes of the meetings held on 17th of September 2020. It's on page 3 to 6. Does everybody agree that it's a true record?
Yeah.
Take it as a yes. Any matter arising from those minutes? No. Moving on, item 4 is revision of domestic vehicle footway crossing policy 2020. Do we have cabinet member here or?
The cabinet member has been invited, but doesn't seem to have arrived yet.
Okay, so in that case, I'll ask Neil Coper to present the report. Neil.
Thank you, Chair. For those that don't know me, I'm Neil Cowper, Head of Highways. So yes, we were expecting Councillor Heatherton. I spoke to her yesterday lunchtime. She did say she was intending to attend, so she may join us at some point. But just in brief, we have brought forward a cabinet report to revise the vehicle crossing policy, which was last looked at in 2016. And the main driver for doing that is that across the city, we still have many residents who drive across pavements without crossings. And in many cases, this is because the rule that we currently have, which says that the distance between the residents' gateway and their property must be at least 4.5 meters. And we have numerous cases across the city where people ask us if we can relax that by an inch or 2 inches or 6 inches or whatever it might be. So we spent some time working with legal colleagues and talking to other authorities and came to the conclusion that if we were to increase the level of enforcement, if people were to overhang, if we actually reduce the driveway depth, the risk is that people will overhang onto the highway, and that may cause problems for pedestrians, particularly for vulnerable users. So if we increase the level of enforcement, if the law is in place, which it is, to stop that, then that might be a good way forward. So that's the nub of what we're bringing forward, is to reduce the depth required from 4.5 to 4 meters. And my personal view is that the majority of residents will behave perfectly safely and park their vehicles in a way that doesn't overhang. So I think the risks of that are lower. We have completed an equality impact assessment as well, which runs alongside that. And we did, as an appendix to the report, we have done some work on typical lengths of small cars, and that seems to indicate that many cars would easily fit on at 4 meters. I think that's probably all I need to say, Chair. You're muted, Chair.
Okay. Members, Any questions? We had discussed this in our pre-meeting. Roger?
Thank you, Chair. We've discussed a lot of things, but I'll try and keep to what I was thinking of. Clearly, there are people, for one reason or another, that don't want to have a drop curb and simply drive over the pavement to park on their front garden. It seems to me that we should be, and it's been mentioned by others, we should be looking to increase enforcement. So can you, first of all, tell us how you're going to do that? And second, what have we been doing up to now? Thank you.
Neil, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. In terms of the revisions of the policy, there's no change in terms of the enforcement of existing illegal crossings. So that powers to deal with that were given to us in 2016, and there are processes in place, which you may be aware involves a two-stage process of writing to residents, which we do, and some residents respond to that. Other residents don't, and it's at that point where, as a council, we have a decision to make as to whether actually to physically block people from driving onto their driveways, and that is a measure that we try to minimise in terms of the impact that will cause.
Roger, are you happy with that?
Can I come back if I may, Chair?
Yeah.
Can you? I mean, it was brought up in the pre-meeting, and someone else may mention it, but can you give us some ideas since 2016 how many people we have either taken legal action against or blocked their drives or whatever we've done? Because I'm aware in my street, for example, there's one street I've got 28 properties that the cars drive over the pavement to get into their front gardens. And so it'd be interesting to have some stats of what we've been doing since 2016, if that's possible, please. Maybe not today, but it would be useful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I think we've provided that recently on request, so I'm sure we can do that, Chair.
Okay. So that will be provided later on. Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have those figures to hand.
Okay. Also, following that, Neil, there was a mention that we actually, if the repeat offender they don't listen to us, then we actually construct in their behalf and then charge them. Do you have any figure how many we did? How many we constructed for people because they are not following our request?
I don't, but I know it's not very many.
Okay. Okay. Matty.
Thank you, Chair. Neil, just wanted to find out what is the current payment if somebody wants to have their curb dropped? And I would imagine more people probably would want to do that with this new change. So that's my first question, and then I can ask my second question after.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. You're right, and it's something that I didn't really outline strongly enough in my introduction. The main reason for bringing forward another change in the policy is to try to make sure that we get more improvements on our pavements, make them safer, stop people driving over them. So that's a really important point. I'm hopeful that if this is approved, then that will bring forward all those people at the moment who are blocked from because of the rule forward to actually build crossings, and I think that will have a big impact. In terms of the cost, it depends on the size of the crossing. Some pavements are wider than others, but as an average, I think it's around £1,500.
Okay.
The reason I say this because if colleagues were discussing earlier in pre-meeting that we should increase the enforcement, but if somebody would want to do it and they might not, because they're being enforced, they might not be able to afford it, can we offer a payment method that they can pay, you know, instalments?
Yes, Councillor, that's something that has been done in the past. Where also, when we are in the vicinity or in a street rebuilding footways as part of our capital programme, we offer a reduction, a half price, basically reduction. So about £750 we can build crossings for, because we've obviously got labour, plant and materials in the street. So we do that, and as part of that, I think we've offered sort of payment instalments in those cases. So I think it's something we'd have to look at if we wanted to roll it out widely, but it's certainly something that we could look at.
Okay, yeah, and I don't think that was mentioned. So if there's 4 meters drop curb, and then someone sells, they got a small car, and then they sell the house, someone else comes in with a bigger car, what happens in that case?
So in that case, we can't, the agreement, we make an agreement with the person that applies for the crossing, but it doesn't endure. So if they move, then the people that come along don't have the same agreement, but are still bound by the fact that it's you shouldn't overhang. You can't present an obstruction onto the pavement. So we could still take the same enforcement action against somebody, and the new householder, if they then parked a huge truck that was blocking the footway across it, we could then take the same enforcement action against them.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Neil.
Okay, I've got Faye, Councillor Rabbit.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about sufficiency of on-street parking. On page 16 of the agenda pack, you've got at point 5, it talks about on-street parking controls, and it says the council may refuse crossing requests where the resulting loss of public on-street parking would adversely affect the operation of a parking scheme or may result in a lack of adequate on-street parking. How do we decide what is adequate on-street parking? Because I can't see any indication of that in there. And it also talks about crossings should not be permitted where they would result in the loss of more than one space in a residence parking scheme. So being a little bit picky, so one person applies for a dropped curb and a crossing, or what happens to the second, third, fourth, fifth application? And again, we need to understand at what point we decide there's adequate on-street parking, but then what happens to those households where we've deemed that there isn't enough adequate on-street parking when their gardens may meet the criteria. And then the other thing as well is there are some areas where you've got properties accessed off walkways off the main road that don't have rear access, and if a large number of the properties on that particular road then have dropped curb, you've got a number of houses that have got nowhere to park because they've got no rear access and no way of accessing the front of the houses. So again, how do we deal with situations like that, please?
Thanks, Councillor. So picking up on your first point, well, actually, in terms of both points, it's not an issue that's been that's really come across my desk in the last 10 years. It's worth pointing out this isn't this is in the existing policy, so that's not a proposed change. But what we would do is that we would ask our colleagues in traffic and network management to make an assessment if the vehicle crossing officer goes to site and felt there was an issue in terms of loss of parking, then they would consult with colleagues in traffic network management and take an engineering decision effectively. So I think that's basically how it works, but I've not really come across it as a problem.
Faye, you want to come back? Or?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I do understand that, but I guess if we're relaxing the rules down to 4 metres, and I know, Neil, you've been out on site with me to some areas in Wykin where people have been prevented from having drop curbs because they don't meet the current requirements.
That's right.
And they may well meet these new requirements. And I'm thinking of some of our terraced houses around Arch Road, Fareham Road, Oldham Avenue. And given that there's residence parking schemes in place there that there are proposals around introducing charging for, I imagine a number of residents will say, well, let's not bother with the parking scheme and it'll cost us 1,500 quid to drop our curbs. Let's do that instead. So you then may start to have a bit of a problem in terms of adequacy of parking on street.
I think that's a really good point, and it's something that we need to plan for. So I'm quite happy to take that point back and discuss it with colleagues in traffic.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask a couple of questions, Neil? How many applications we received in 1 year, and how many you actually approved, how many you refused, and what is the time scale for approving an application?
Right, I'll have to come back to you, Chair, in terms of those numbers. I can make some educated guesses. It has dropped in certainly sort of since COVID, and there have been other impacts as well in terms of you may be aware that the way to apply for crossing is through the planning portal. When that was introduced, that did cause some concern for some residents, but I think that the impact of that is lessened now. I think people are clear on how to apply, and the website is much clearer than it was at first. I would say off the top of my head, and I do get numbers on this, that we the council build currently about 15 a month, and something like another 10 built by external contractors. So somewhere in the region of about 25 a month. Although that don't hold me to that. That's not in tablets of stone. So what's that? Something like sort of 300 a year or something of that sort of ilk.
Okay. Yeah. The other thing I would like you to clarify is although you mentioned the list of classified roads have been attached, but we didn't see anything with our papers. Can you please tell us if that list of classified road is available online before people apply, that they know that they need a planning permission, not just the approval from the highways? So, I mean, I welcome this report because I have been asking for a long time that we do need to review this and reduce the length from 4.5 to 4 meters. However, the process is quite, complex for some people. When they go online, it's not straightforward, and it should be straightforward in this day and age, to be honest, because as a council, we're encouraging people to do everything online. So, on the other hand, our system is not clear enough. And the reason we are here today is, I think we discussed that, nearly, that I would like this process to be easy. Everybody can apply, and they don't need to go through our customer service and wait there half an hour for the customer service to answer the phone. Because at the moment, everybody is doing everything online. So please, can you ensure us that, this process will be make more easier for people to apply, more understandable. They don't need to go around asking councillor or other people. The list of classified roads should be there before people make an application, that this is the classified road. They need a planning permission for that. Yeah.
Certainly, Chair, happy to look at that. I would say that the whole system is online, and if you go onto the website, the links are there that take you straight through into the planning portal. And I know the planning portal is quite friendly in terms of it asks you questions, you tick boxes, and then it takes you down the right route. There are some complexities in that you do have to well, you can apply for planning permission on any crossing if you want it, but there is a complexity in terms of if you're saying that you don't need planning permission, you have to get something called a certificate of lawfulness. But again, the website allows you to do that. You just fill a form in that basically says, I, as a resident, certify that my driveway is legal for the council to build a crossing. So, but we have been through that with colleagues in planning, and I'm happy to revisit it.
So the other thing is, what is the time scale? If somebody applied today for a drop curb, so how long does it take that to approval?
It takes 8 weeks to go through the planning process, and then a shorter period if residents choose to use the council as the contractor. Then it comes into my operation DLO team. Then they'll make the preparations to actually go and build it. So that might take another 2 weeks, say.
Okay.
In terms of if it goes to an external contractor, couldn't say how long they take to gear up, but I imagine not very long.
Okay.
So somewhere around 3 months maximum, I would say.
3 months.
Yeah.
It's quite a long time for it, just for the drop curb, to be honest, to get 3 months approval.
That's down to the fact that it has to go through the planning process, Chair, and the planning process is an 8-week process.
But if you don't need planning permission, then it should be less than 3 months, isn't it?
The situation is that the council's view is that all crossings need to go through the starting at the planning stage.
Okay, so that means my understanding was that the only crossing on the classified road go to the planning, not the others. So now you're saying that all applications go through the planning.
Yes, that was a decision taken about 2 years ago.
Okay. So there is no exception now. All application must go to the planning.
Must go through the planning portal. It doesn't mean you need planning permission. When you get on the planning portal, you choose whether to self-certify or whether you want to apply for planning permission.
Okay. Basically, you apply there and they look into it. If you do need a planning permission, they'll say to you, yeah, you need a planning permission. Is that correct?
You decide if you're not on a classified road, then you still don't have permitted development rights unless you. It's complicated because it's to do with the drainage side. So if your driveway is allows or drains properly, it doesn't drain water onto the highway, then you do have permitted development, so you can self-certify. But if you're not sure, then you might want to apply for planning permission.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. The other question is around this designated vehicle crossing officer. I think we had him 4 years, more than that. I remember after 2016 policy, we recruited a designated officer. What does that see? It does. He actually work on the crossing, or has he got any other role as well?
Yes, he deals with all the applications that come into my operational team and supervises that work. He deals with all the enforcement letters, and he also supervises and checks on the external contractors and the work that they're carrying out to make sure that they don't build crossings which are substandard.
Okay. I mean, we discussed in our pre-meeting enforcement. I mean, I understand some people just park occasionally, but some are quite regularly use our, footway to gain access. And some are, to be honest, they can apply it, they can afford to get the crossing done. I mean, I would like to know what actually we're doing about that. Does he drive through the area to check, who is the main offender? The people got money, they've got big cars, they can apply for it.
So where people report to us about illegal crossings, Mark will do an investigation and do a letter drop into that street. we don't have the resource to do that on a citywide basis, on a daily basis. We would need more. We would need another officer to do that.
Okay, I've just seen Robert Hay. Rob, you're on mute, Rob.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. In regards to the the curbs, the crossings being put in by external contractors, are they inspected when they're done, and are they inspected after a certain period of time to see if they're still, because they could look good when they're done, but then 6 months later they fall into bits. That's my question on that.
Thanks, Councillor. They're inspected. That's part of the vehicle crossing officer's job, is they're inspected during construction, so that he's aware that they've put the right depths of materials in. We shouldn't get failures of substandard crossings. So we check it as the work goes along.
Rob?
Okay, I'm happy with that.
Okay, I see Councillor Heatherton just joined us. Welcome, Pat. Would you like to say something on this one?
No, I think the only thing to say, sorry, I've got a little bit of activity going on outside. Yeah, the only thing to say, Chair, is that, you know, from so many people's perspective, this will really help them, because they found it very difficult in the past. And Neil and I have gone out to sites and looked, you know, where they've just been short and we couldn't make exceptions. And I think we have to do everything we can to encourage people, because most people want to be compliant. And I think there's been a problem before. So hopefully this will assist there. On the enforcement side, I think, you know, it's talking to Paul Bowman's team, and the enforcement comes under Councillor Abdul Khan, and it's what we can do going forward, because clearly we pick up, people send me photographs of illegal parking and so on, and then we do send the officers out. But, you know, it's we have very few people trying to keep on top of this these days, and but doing their best. So it is something that we would love to take forward, but I think we all know that with the funding situation at the moment, this is going to be very difficult to do. But there's been no change in policy, and we will continue to do it where we can.
Thank you, Patricia. We discussed this, and I remember we all welcome this, to be honest, because I have been asking for a long time that this policy need to be reviewed, and the requirement length need to be, you know, reduced in order for people to get the crossing done. And I welcome this, you know, wholeheartedly. The only thing I would like to say is, Pat, that we do need to make this process more easier for people to apply and get this done as quickly as possible, because sometimes the process is a bit too long and people just fed up, you know, don't bother, you know, let's park it like that. So we do need to encourage people, making the process more easier.
We will do, Chair. I think Neil has already looked at that, but we do want to simplify it. And if we make it as simple as possible, then people can come on and they can actually, in the digital world, we'll look at the form filling, we'll make sure that it is exactly as it should be and isn't complicated, just to encourage people to actually not be put off when they start seeing all those forms, because clearly what you're saying is people start to look at these things and think it's not worth it. And we have to encourage people to come forward. So by looking at the forms, then I think Neil will come in and tell you exactly that he has looked at that side of things, is to make sure that it is, as I say, a very basic form where people can fill in and just move forward as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Pat. I mean, look, our role as a scrutiny is to help officer and to make you know, process simpler and easier, and make the recommendation which actually help our communities. Parking is a big issue at the moment, not just here, all over the country. As Neil said earlier, that I think we only approved or construct 20 or 25 crossing every month. I think we need to accelerate a bit more. We need to encourage people a bit more. 20 or 25 is nothing, to be honest, in this day and age. This size of our city. I can see if you drive around, there is a lot of street in the city where the ample space on the gardens, the front garden, they can get the crossing done. So hopefully, through the council website and other means, we'll encourage people to apply for wherever possible and get this construction, of the crossing done. Thank you. Robert.
Yeah, on that point about about parking in the front garden, I can walk from my house to my mum's house, which is 2 streets away, and I'll walk past about 15 illegal ones where people have just knocked the front wall down, tarmacked it, and drive over the pavement every day. So we need enforcement on that as well, because that's damaging the pavement. And some of them are overhanging because that street shouldn't have, because the gardens are less than 4 metres. So they just overhang into the pavement anyway. So we need to do some work on that, the illegal ones.
Neil?
Yeah, I've picked up on that point, Chair. I mean, we have a process in place that hasn't changed. This policy doesn't change that. Enforcement is something that we can follow up. As I say, we've got a 2-stage process. We write to residents, and if they don't respond, we write a second time. The difficulty is the next step is to actually physically block them from driving onto their driveways.
Yeah, can I suggest that when we get this policy changed, can we put something on City Vision, because that City Vision goes to almost every house in the city. Maybe with Councillor Patricia Heatherton's quote or about this change of the policy, and that may encourage people to apply.
I would love to do that, Chair. I think that we could look at doing a campaign. I can talk to comms as well to make sure that, look, if we get the message out that the policy has changed in trying to accommodate people, then I think it's a good news story in that respect. We're making it simpler. We're trying to do the right thing so that we don't have people choosing to go down the illegal route. And Robert's quite right. I mean, I despair sometimes. You hear my little dog barking, but when I'm out walking, and at times there's no room for people. If you're in a wheelchair, if you've got push chairs, a number of times I pass people going to and from the local school, and having to go onto the road almost, because people have been inconsiderate. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's that consideration that we should have for people, and to ensure that the safe walkways is no longer a priority for a lot of people. So I think there is some work to do there, Chair, and I absolutely agree that we could probably look at doing City Vision. I know there's one going out at Christmas time, leading up to Christmas. I'm not sure if we can get in on that one, but certainly we can look at comms and see how we can get the message out here.
Thank you, Pat. Neil?
Yeah, I just wanted to say there was a press release that was ready to go out with the cabinet report, so we'll absolutely make sure that happens. And I would welcome what Patricia said in terms of getting that message out from the council and from the cabinet member. I think that would be really good. I do think it's really important also the point that cabinet member was making in terms of this is a really positive story, and many of the crossings that the illegal crossings that we're seeing are there because people can't have them because their driveways are somewhere between 4 and 4.5 meters. So we'll start to make inroads into that. And I just think I absolutely accept the points about enforcement of historic illegal crossings, but we just need to be really careful as a council in terms of if we push hard on that at the same time as encouraging people to come forward with the relaxation in the policy. If we get a story out there that we're also blocking people from driving into their driveways as they see them, I think that would be a bit of an own goal. So we need to be careful about that type of enforcement for the time being.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions, colleague, to Neil or Pat? No? In that case, Vicky's busy taking some note. Vicky, can you read the additional recommendations, what we're suggesting?
Of course. I think the recommendations that you came up with were around strengthening enforcement. We've obviously, Neil's mentioned he's got to be a bit careful around that, but I think that was, you wanted that to be included in the note. There was going to be a recommendation around publicising, thank you, via City Vision and a comms campaign. The note to Cabinet will also include the points around ensuring there's adequacy of street parking, and we'll say that the policy is welcomed. And then there's some actions around the numbers of applications for crossings and numbers of letters and driveways blocked and work undertaken, which will be circulated after the meeting from Neil.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Is everybody agree with those action and recommendations, colleague?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Neil and Pat. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, going back to the agenda then. So the next item is the work program. I mean, this is my last meeting. In the next time, I think in the next meeting, you'll have a new chair. So I don't know what you want to put on the work program. It's entirely up to you. You want to discuss it now or leave it to the next chair? Faye.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make sure we pull in the discussion around residence parking permits, please.
If I tell you on that something, it's been to political cabinet, and we did not agree that the new policy is going ahead. So I think they're reviewing in it. I think they will come back maybe in a couple of months' time. So
okay.
Whenever is the new proposals, came before they go to cabinet or the Labour group, I'm pretty sure it will come to scrutiny.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody want to put some the work program, or just leave it as it is until next meeting, until we've got a new chair? Is that okay?
I think it's okay as it is. I want to know about the average speed enforcement update, so I'm happy with that one.
That is 17th December is anyway. It's on there.
So I want to leave that on there. I don't want to.
Okay. So I'll make sure that it's still there, but it depends who is going to chair this. It's dependent on the new chair anyway. Okay.
Do we not know who the chair is?
No. I think it's going to be. I think the ballot will take place on 16th of November. The Labour group.
Right.
So yeah, you will know after 16th. Okay. So there is no other business notified to me. In that case, I'll close the meeting, and thank you very much for your support during my last 3-4 years as a chair of Scrutiny 4.
Thank you for your chairmanship as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger.
No, you've been a great chair.
Thank
you.
you.
When you first started here, you made me welcomed from the very day one when I came. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. So thank you very much, and see you at some point in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
Bye then. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.